Hey, welcome everybody to Tolkien Collector's Guide. We are very excited to have Oliver Bayliss here with us today, talking about a catalog that he's releasing imminently with a lot of very interesting Tolkien material. So welcome, Oliver. It's great to have you here with us today.
It's lovely to be here, and lovely to properly meet you guys.
Yeah, so tell us first. I'm very excited to know about this catalog, and we'll wander afar from there. But what started this? Did you have a client who is clearing house, or do you have what was the impetus to get this awesome collection of
So it's
material?
quite a bit of a mad story. So in November of last year, a gentleman called me up asking if I take items on consignment, which I do. And most days I have people calling me up saying, do you do stuff on consignment? And 90% of the time it's like a 50p paperback, something I'd never touch. With this, I kind of realized quite quickly by the questions he was asking and everything were kind of the steps we were going through. He hadn't told me at this point what it was, but the questions he was asking, my gut feeling was actually this is probably something quite major. And at the very end of the phone call, he then revealed the Tolkien collection. He referenced the galley-proof letter, which I was aware of. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my God, wow, yeah, that's a pretty amazing collection.
Yeah.
He then said at the end, though, that he was contacting about 3 other dealers in the UK, which was me, to make a decision. So I immediately was like, oh God, quite a new dealer. The likelihood of me getting this is slim, but the fact I'm in the running is actually a great kind of ego boost to business, I suppose. And that was the end of last year. I chased him, but didn't chase too much. I think there's always a fine line between if you're really almost stalking someone for something and kind of being a bit more like, I'd love to.
You don't want to seem too desperate.
Yeah, exactly. And also kind of, there's some cool way of doing it, which I sort of, my fiance Amy, I kept running by. I was like, do you reckon I can message now? Is that okay? And kind of, so kept it cool. And then we got to the beginning of this year. The owner, who I'm not going to mention by name, so they could be quite annoyed. He then told me he's going out to the States to talk to a few dealers out there as well, to basically widen the pool of dealers I'm up against. By this point, I knew the other dealers in the UK that he was interested in going for. And with that, because all 3 of them have been around for many, many years, one of which has been going since the 60s, I knew I'd never get it. It's like, the chance of this happening is so slim. And they went to New York and I was like, Jesus, this is never going to happen. Came back from New York and we kept chatting and kept meeting up. The one, I suppose, many benefits I had, but the one kind of major one was I was in London. So it kind of helped. I could go and see him and we could sit down. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to get this. But the wonderful thing about my job is I love Tolkien. I can go and meet up with someone and discuss these letters and his amazing collection. That's a great job. I'm not going to get this collection, but to go and sit in a cafe in North London and chat about Tolkien is not a bad working day. Then it went on a little bit more and I kind of thought like, it's never going to happen. And then one day, about 2 months ago, he called me up and said, actually, I've decided you're the person I'm going to go with, which is amazing. Many a glass of champagne was drunk that night. But yeah, it's an amazing thing. And then quite hilariously, so he gave the collection to me, but the means in which it was given to me, which is almost comically ridiculous. We met, I'm in South London, he's up in North London. We met halfway and I arrived at a cafe. It's a very nondescript cafe. It's like saying I have a detective film this. Ordered a coffee, waited for him to come. He then arrived he brought the collection in this black briefcase, but like the stereotypical, almost like film noir with the kind of clicky bits on the side. And I was sitting outside and he basically came over, handed me this briefcase, stayed for a second, then left. And the people on the table next to me were kind of looking like, what the hell is going on?
Wait, he didn't say
the whole thing.
He handed it to you and didn't say anything? Like he just gave it to you?
He did say a couple of things. I kind of wish he said nothing. It'd been so much cooler if he left him. And then he then left. I then booked an Uber, and I've never had this before in my life, before it or since. The Uber that arrived was a Range Rover. So for the people sitting next to me, I then briefcase handed to me. I then get into a blacked out Range Rover and drive off. Quite a surreal day in my business. But
all those people at the cafe think you work for MI6. I guarantee you.
Definitely. Yeah, it was also very close to MI6. We were literally around the corner. It was a very surreal moment. But then, I got the collection. I'd only seen the collection prior to that as pictures, the information that's on your website I used quite a lot actually. And then, anytime I went to go see him, he kind of showed me, little bits from it. So it wasn't until I actually got the collection, I got to sit down with it and start going through it, which took quite a long time, in an amazing way. Yeah, I then realized actually, especially with the letters, the kind of magnitude of the collection and how interesting it is. Yeah, and that's how I came to have it.
So what's in this collection? We know there's a couple of letters from the social media posts you've been
So
sharing.
there's a number of
Some
letters,
books.
and then we have a wealth of first editions. So a number of first Lord of the Rings sets in varying condition. I think the way he kind of collected them, he adores Tolkien. He always intended to sell at some point. So we have various different price points on first Lord of the Rings. One of which, though, which I actually have next to me, I'll show you in a second. It is the finest copy I've ever seen, and I've come across quite a few now. But what differentiates it in such a mad way is the lady who owned it. So initially when I saw it, I thought actually quite annoying. She wrote a name in it, so previous ownership inscription, how frustrating, devalues it. But then I actually started looking at it a bit more, and with each one, with her ownership inscription, she's then given a month and a date. And those months and those dates correspond with the publishing and printing dates of each one. She worked for the British Museum, quite a senior position. And we obviously can't say for certainty, but all signs point to a very high likelihood that this set is one of the few that was bought as and when they came out sequentially. As and when they came out. And then from that point on would have remained together. So not only is it a beautiful, beautiful set, but also...
If she worked at the British Museum, she could have just walked over the road and bought them from Alan Unwin's shop.
This is our theory. We actually had a very strong theory that actually there was a familial connection potentially with the publishers. I put on my rare book detective hat and managed to actually track down her daughter, who said there was no connection to publishers, but there's a high likelihood she might have bought them from publishers. Which she was obsessed with Tolkien, and the likelihood is very, very, we can't say for certain.
They had them in the windows. I mean, they did do window displays.
Yeah.
And she'd gone up Museum Street to go to, which is one of the main entrances. She would have walked past and seen them. So yeah, she would have, one of the few places you probably would have seen the books.
Yeah, and that was our thing. I think on the way to work each morning, it's very rare for people. They were published in such small numbers, and they sold out relatively quickly. So I think the idea of someone actually having them as and when they're published, it is very slim. Sadly, we can't say 100% for certain, but I think I was looking at it again today, earlier on. I think it'd be very strange for someone to buy a book and then at a later date decide to add in the date it was published, despite the fact it says that in the book already. I think a lot of signs do point to the fact that it's a set that has remained together for 70 years, which is amazing.
And you're so Oliver, in your opinion, because I'm thinking about the value as well. If the set, if it was bought as the volumes were published and they were kept together, is that a significant value bump, or is that?
It changes it. If we confirm 100%, which sadly we can't, but if it was possible to confirm 100%, it becomes one of the few, if not only, sets that's actually guaranteed has remained together since essentially they were born. It takes it from maybe just below 100k to certainly a fair bit above 100k. But we sadly can't confirm 100%, which is, but I think we're very close, but it's sort of annoying you can't get 100%.
There seems to be a lot of evidence to like somebody who's buying that could easily believe that was the case. Sounds like.
I think with the owner, his theory initially, when he kind of put it to me, I wanted to believe in it. Do obviously now believe in it, but initially when I sat down and really looking at the books, I think it would be very, very rare, as I kind of said, for someone at a later date to add their name. And then
that would have been strange, I think.
And she was all signs point to being a very level-headed woman. I think kind of there's no,
and like Trotter was saying, if she worked at the British Museum, it's very reasonable to think that she just popped over and bought them.
It literally is next door to the entrance.
Yeah.
So it is. Yeah.
No, it's a fascinating set. And then, alongside that, we then have a number of first editions of The Hobbit, one of which is the finest one I've come across. It almost looks as though it's unread. Like the book block is perfect, the spine is perfect. It's actually shocking the condition it's in. And alongside that, we have a number of other ones. And then also alongside that, the collection kind of spreads from, ones that are very good up to near fine, up to fine. And then the creme de la creme is obviously the letters in the collection. And yeah, that's the collection.
Very good. And that all fit in one little briefcase, I think.
What a big briefcase. Yeah.
I'm picturing that fitting in a Range Rover, that's sounds like
Yeah, it was a surreal day, that.
I'm sure. Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, let's talk about the letters a little bit. You've shared some snippets on social media and read a tiny bit from them, but so it sounds like from the outside, I think we've identified 5 letters from the pictures that you've shared. Does that sound right, or is
that is right? Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. So your identifying skills from Instagram zooming in is actually quite shocking.
We've looked at a lot of letters.
This is what we do, Oliver. This is what we
do. We do have a database with all the transcriptions, so it is easy to find them.
No, what you guys have done is amazing. I think in terms of a platform for collectors, dealers, and institutions, it is invaluable. It's an incredibly important thing that you guys put together.
Excellent. We're glad to hear that, and it's good to see it finding some use. It's a delicate line we try and walk between oversharing information that's not ours to share, which is the actual contents of the letter and the images of them.
Yeah, I can imagine actually.
That's something where the fair use and copyright and everything. We're trying to be overly cautious. We're not critical of dealers and auction houses obviously share photos of what they have, etc. And we're staying as far as we can on the protective side.
I suppose I didn't think of that actually. Yeah, copyright and things like that. I never really thought.
Yeah, so
it's very important for us. Yeah, it's not for you particularly because it doesn't really make much difference, but it is important for us.
No,
we don't want the Tolkien state coming and shutting us down or anything like that.
That would be good.
We're trying to help you.
No, they wouldn't say it like that. No, we're not doing that. The thing is that they're unpublished letters, so that's the bit that they don't like because obviously at some point they'd like to publish the letters. And if they have already been published and everyone can read them very easily, it actually isn't as good for the estate. So that it's perfectly understandable their position on this.
So Oliver, how did you go about establishing a value for the 5 letters? Was it mostly previous sales? How did you go about doing that?
So generally previous sales. I looked into comparables in terms of content. How other dealers had listed them, previous sales as well, and then auction records. And sort of came to a middle ground, I think. The worst thing I think a dealer can do is sell something too high, because that's just ridiculous. Then also the worst thing to do is sell it too low as well. So always try and find that middle ground. Just looked at comparables, looked at what had sold and where the market's at currently, which is seemingly always growing. And with the new films coming out and all that stuff, the interest seems to be in overdrive at the moment.
Excellent. So what's your favorite letter of the 5 that when you first got them and started looking through them?
So initially it was the galley proof letter, because by that point I didn't know about the Holmes. I keep misspelling that. Sorry, saying that wrong today. The Sherlock Holmes reference. The galley proof for me was, as soon as I saw it, I actually had it in the flesh. It's amazing. I think the references and also seeing Tolkien quite angry, I quite like, and understandably so. I think having, when that letter was received, so when the manuscript was received down in Unwin, the fact that editors kind of thought, actually, clearly he's made an error here, we'll update his spelling. I quite like the idea of talking about, no, I have not made an error. It's sort of the genius of languages kind of, no.
What's amazing, of course, is the Puffin did exactly the same thing about 8 years later, and they did exactly the same. So I'm not surprised they're absolutely mad with them.
You'd be so frustrated, especially as he even says he doesn't have to go through every single one because he will miss them. That initially was my favorite one. And then as I started cataloging and going through everything, with the 2 riddle letters, which actually came up with a line, I think, they're riddles in themselves. I think especially the handwritten one is so confusing. trying to transcribe it is a bit of a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
With those, you know, I obviously looked at the previous auction listing from 2002. I looked at your guys' website and then kind of, you know, started going into it. I think I came to those potentially with a bit of a prejudice, just from initially what I'd read, that, you know, they're interesting, but potentially quite dense in the sense that this is very almost impenetrable and kind of, you know, there's no references maybe to Lord of the Rings, Hobbits, things like that, but still incredibly interesting. So I think I sort of came to those last. I expected them to be the tricky ones of, you know, working out what he's actually saying, which initially I did try and have that. I think obviously, you know, the man was a genius. I'm not a genius, and trying to work out what he's trying to say about nouns, verbs, and split infinitives was, yeah, I think it's one of those things that I wish I paid more attention at school. And then as I was going through it, especially the handwritten one, getting more and more confused, I then came across Sherlock Holmes. Oh, wow, no way. I almost like went past it and I was like, wait, did I just read that? And then went back to it and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then from that I was like, are there gonna be any other entrances? And then got to the very last paragraph in which then there's Holmes, Mycroft, not Moriarty, Mycroft, and Conan Doyle referenced, which in itself is amazing. I think, you know, to have a major author referencing another major author, and then also referencing, you know, one of the most important literary creations in English literature, arguably, is brilliant. But also the fact that he's not that complimentary, it seems. Mm-hmm. I think that it's open to debate, the reading of it, I think. But I think, you know,
I'm just going to read it out. It says, and as for Mycroft, he makes a poor show when presented by his creator, Conan Doyle, not himself distinguished as a particularly acute thinker, and so one does not expect much of him. Surely there is quite a sniff of priggery about these two precious gents. It's interesting to put that in, isn't it? That's a fascinating thing.
Quite, I read that as rude. Prig.
It is rude.
Not,
it kind of is. Yeah.
Initially, I was like, can I say this is rude? And I had sort of similar thing we were just talking about. That maybe the Tolkien estate would come after me. But kind of, prig is a rude word. I also think, you know, talking about Conan Doyle, not distinguishing himself as a particularly acute thinker is fascinating. But also earlier in the letter, with the first reference, I just grab the actual letter. What I find so interesting is, give me 1 second. Sorry about this.
There's too many letters you got to dig through.
Yeah, a lot of letters.
There's so many.
There's the letter there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the very first reference to Sherlock Holmes, it's quite confusing beforehand, by the way, and then it goes into it. The bare stem cannot do this in English, the principal exception being when it is combined with certain modal auxiliary verbs like shall, and then shall is underlined, and then in brackets, a matter in which Sherlock Holmes attempted to put over a manifest piece of fraud. I don't fully understand what Tolkien's saying before that. So for me, it's sort of, when I first read that, I was like, that is quite interesting. And if you couple that with what he said in the last paragraph, I think
that Riddle sent him a letter and mentioned Holmes in the letter.
It was,
that's where this comes from.
I'm going.
And he mentioned Conan Doyle in the letter. But we haven't got that letter. We don't know what the letter was that he sent, but I think that's why he's bringing it up.
The length between them as well. The first letter is January. Then in the handwritten one, Tolkien mentions the fact that he hasn't replied yet about the August one. And then he replies in October. Yeah, in October. I think there's a lot of time between that. But I think, the conversation they had is most of the stuff in there. Even when I got to the first Sherlock Holmes bit, talk about modal auxiliaries. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? I had absolutely no idea. And then got on to the Sherlock Holmes bit. But it is, for me, I think that letter, it is, Tolkien referencing Sherlock Holmes. I adore Sherlock Holmes. I adore Tolkien. So that's amazing in itself. Then come on to
Tolkien liked Agatha Christie, and I have seen as well that someone said that, I think it was somewhere an Agatha Christie scholar said that he also liked Sherlock Holmes. And he was quite a big fan of detective stories. And
maybe it was a bad day when he was writing a letter. Kind of.
Well, obviously, he didn't like him that much because he's quite.
I think also the Conan Doyle thing, not himself distinguished, a particularly acute thinker, is it is rude. It's kind of
It very well could have been one of those things, like maybe Tolkien liked it when he was younger, and then he came back to it as later on in life, and maybe he didn't like it so much. It could have been something like
Which
that.
he did with George MacDonald, didn't he?
Uh-huh.
He didn't like George MacDonald later on. He did to begin with. He didn't like him later
I didn't know that either. I didn't know that Agatha
Yeah.
Christie. I adore Agatha Christie. She, is my favorite author. But I adore Tolkien. But Agatha Christie is my sort of my top level.
No, he quite liked Agatha Christie.
Mhm.
There's actually going to be there's a book coming out about Miss Marple in September, and there's actually an anecdote in there about Tolkien and Agatha Christie.
Oh, no way.
Well, there is.
I mean,
that came from me, but that's in there. Yeah.
Just revealed everything. I mean, the dealer's dream would be to have a first edition either by Tolkien or Agatha Christie inscribed to the other one.
Mhm.
I think, sadly, I don't think I'll ever get that. But yeah, that would be the dream right there.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be. Or if you had actually one inscribed to Conan Doyle, in which he calls him a prick or something, that'd be quite. Yeah.
That's gonna be a good sale because these. I think most of the 5 letters you they've been off market for a couple decades.
Especially the 2 Ritter ones. It was 2002 they were sold, and then they've been in private hands since then. Another one of the letters that I adore is the Bag End one. I just think it's one to have it referenced.
That was good.
Yeah, that was really good.
I think to find out where the name came from, and also talking of delving into the fact that it's actually you can name your house whatever you want to name your house. But yeah, that's a particularly lovely one as well. The Ritter ones, though, as time's gone on, even the handwritten one, as I said, I think before we kind of started, to have him then talking about his son, and then his son in reference to Arthur, his son's grandfather, Tolkien's father, and his son basically saying he's very basically happy he never had to take that name. And after that, he goes into a really nice quote from his son, in which he's basically saying, Arthur reminds me of a man with a big mustache, a long watch chain, and I think a curly pipe. I don't know why, obviously, curly pipe isn't Gandalf, but something about that quote made me think of Gandalf. But then after that, Tolkien then delves into prejudices that can come from names. So just certain names carry with them already a preconceived notion, which I think, it's a lovely connection, one to his son and also his dad. But then to take that and then go into the realm of kind of, I think it is true. Every name does have a certain, different people by different names, sort of like that person, like that's a cheeky name. That's this name kind of, I always had that with Oliver. People say it's a really cheeky name. But yeah, it's really interesting. I think that both letters are sort of, the Ritter ones, I didn't dislike them, but I kind of thought like these are interesting because they're by Tolkien, but maybe there's nothing in here that particularly I like, but maybe another collector will. But once I started going through them, actually, I found so much. And in the handwritten one, he then goes into Old English, Old German, Old French, which again is interesting, him being a student of languages. He then starts comparing sort of different vernaculars and different ways of saying things, so kind of like university slang, goes into how cabmen might speak about things. He references football, which is quite interesting. There's a lot to that letter, the initial, once I've discovered with the typed one, the Sherlock Holmes reference, thought that was amazing, and still thought the other ones maybe, not that interesting. But then as I started going through that one, I then realized actually both are fascinating, and the length of them, the handwritten one is 8 pages, I think, and the typed one is 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a lot in them. And the cataloging, I think my actual description is incredibly long on both, just because I kept trying to cut things out, what isn't really needed. But then I think it's
all needed, Oliver. It's all needed. Yeah.
The initial cataloging, in 2002, by the auction house that sold, obviously it was they really focused more on the kind of split infinitives and that, which obviously is all in there. But I almost do feel like they maybe focused on potentially the most boring parts of it. But maybe someone it'd be the most interesting part. I think, it's always subjective, but I think, there's more in there than I realized. So I think those two have become probably my favorite at this point of the letters.
Yeah, I like in that one, he's put at the bottom, forgive this rather hasty scrawl. Now he puts that in so many letters. So many with his hasty scrawl.
But also like a hasty, I was thinking that earlier, like a hasty scrawl is something you might write on one piece of paper. To have double-sided paper.
Oh, yes.
That's not hasty. There's a lot of effort.
That's how Tolkien was.
His letter, letter 131, he says that this is a short note on things, and it's about how many 10? It's over 10,000 words, isn't it?
And it's a short note.
It's a short note.
That's know what a long note is, kind of. Yeah.
What is a long
Lord
one?
of the Rings, yeah.
Yeah. Tolkien in so many letters with apologies for his handwriting or apologies for his delayed reply. That's what a lot of Tolkien letters are being said.
Yeah, his handwriting though is one. It's amazing. His handwriting is exactly how I imagine maybe like an elf to write, but it is in places quite indecipherable. I've been at so many letters, been like, what are you saying at this point? Yeah, you kind of get there.
Same for us. It's quite indecipherable for us at times as well. Even though we've had a lot of practice.
It takes.
I suppose if you're going off of, even if they're kind of, let's say, older letters that maybe been auctioned years ago, if you're going off those older pictures, then yeah, I'd say probably is quite hard to actually try and zoom in and see what they're saying. Yeah.
I will. I'll send you some transcriptions of these, but I'll also send you one of the images that we've got at the moment, so you can see how bad it is for the riddle letter. You see what we've been trying to work with. You can find it quite easy compared with that.
Well, luckily, I've got when I did the video content, I also have an amazing photographer that I use for this. I think on certain things, my website, I do it myself. It depends on kind of if it needs to be incredibly high res. And on things like this, I think especially letters, and then like the particularly amazing first edition set I have here, which I'll show in a second. I think having a proper photographer with an amazing camera is important. So the snaps that I've got back from him are incredibly clear, and it's every page, every letter. So it's kind of, I think with things like that, especially obviously these are incredibly high value items. I think giving more pictures is better than less pictures.
Absolutely.
And especially with letters, like, giving people the option, you can transcribe a letter, which is great, but I actually think for so many, especially collectors and collective letters, they want to be able to read it themselves on the screen before they buy it.
Well, it's a better way to sell it, isn't it? Because again, if you just say, well, there's a letter and it's 6 pages long and I've got this. Whereas if you actually put some pictures in of what's in the letter and have a bit of transcription and mention some of the interesting things, it just makes it a more interesting letter.
Yeah, completely. Also things like also things Tolkien's signature is amazing. I think it is of all the signatures I've come across, it is a particularly beautiful signature. So I think that has to be shown as much as possible. And then his handwriting is just absolutely amazing. I think I've yet to come across an author. There's no author's handwriting I particularly enjoy, apart from Tolkien. I think it's everything you imagine it would be from the man who created Middle Earth, I think.
So your catalog's coming out in when we release this, you'll be sending it out to newsletter subscribers almost immediately thereafter.
Yeah, it will be. So the plan is, obviously next Monday is the 7th anniversary of the first book, which I'll actually quickly show you. So I have it here. So Fellowship of the Ring, Monday is 70 years since that was published, which is mad. Also, I was thinking earlier on, as a slight digression, I tend to digress on things quite a lot. 70 years is not that long ago. It's a lifetime, or it's just under a lifetime, I suppose. But to think how much has changed in the world in 70 years and the different world we live in when that was written, that's just a side point. So then it's going out officially on Monday, on the 7th anniversary, sending it out. I think especially the first set we have here with one of the most lovely fellowships I've ever come across. As I'm sure you guys know, fellowship is the hardest one to find in actual collectible condition. Most that you come across are in awful condition. Still lovely, still collectible, but I think to actually find them with dust jackets that haven't been restored, which these haven't, to not be blighted by so many of the kind of discoloration I think the dust jackets get. But then for my newsletter subscribers, so anyone watching this, please subscribe. I'll be sending out a kind of early preview on Friday, very shortly after this goes out, just to give my subscribers, a reason to click on, I suppose. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's great. And so it sounds, as a collector, I love getting physical catalogs. It sounds like this one's going to be an online catalog.
So I did. Yeah, so I debated on the physical catalog front. I've done a couple at this point, and some people love them. I personally love them. I receive catalogs from other dealers. I think they're lovely things to have. But generally, the main bulk of my collectors don't actually particularly want them. A few have said that like they like them for a day and then they throw them away. And catalogs aren't cheap to produce. So when I heard that, I was like, wow. I almost wanted to swear at them. I was like, that took me like hours of learning InDesign, learning Photoshop, and kind of all that goes with it. So with this, I decided keep it online and see how that goes. I think, I don't know, maybe I'll come to regret it. I don't know. It'd be nice potentially for myself to have a memento of I suppose, doing it. But yeah, for this, I'm just doing it online.
No, that's actually, yeah. And it sounds like you have all the raw materials if in the future you wanted to do, I'm picturing the tier of collector who can't currently afford, you know, a pristine first edition set or a signed letter or something like that. Having a physical catalog is
very true,
even paying for one as a collectible.
That is true, actually.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you can be a part of it even if you can't afford the items. Yeah.
I didn't actually think of that. Yeah, that is very true. I'm now regretting doing one.
No, that wasn't our intention.
It would be
it's been awful now. Actually.
No, you need another month to put it together. You know, those.
Oliver.
So.
But there's still time.
I understand.
Yeah.
Sorry, Oliver. I understand that you're looking at opening a physical location. So if people wanted to come and see these, they could contact you via the website.
So I took the lease on a very lovely studio in West London. Literally got the keys about 2 weeks ago. I think for a long time, you know, I've been a dealer now for just over 3 years on my own as Bayliss Rare Books. And it worked incredibly well as just being online. But I think it got to the point where, especially with items like consignment or on larger items, you know, if someone's going to spend potentially 6 figures on a book, they do want to see it. And I completely understand that. And I always end up in a sort of awkward position of I don't want people coming to my home, but at the same time, they do need to see these items. And often solutions with cafes, which just, you know, sometimes, I don't know, like, whilst it was great to get the collection in the cafe from that briefcase.
You spilled tea all over it.
Yeah, exactly.
That would not be good. That would be a
showing some illuminated manuscript about a year ago, and that did nearly happen. I nearly had
dear.
But yeah, so I think I kind of realized as time went on that a physical space is very important. I want to also make it as, you know, place collectors want to come down to. So many of the books I have really benefit from actually being seen in the flesh. And yes, I now have the keys. I'm now desperately trying to find a desk. I think that's very important. And it will be, to be honest, if anyone wants to see anything from now, I'm always open to basically going down and showing them. There won't be a desk at that point, but I can still show them in the flesh. But the plan is for it to be sort of officially open by appointment only for clients, collectors, and anyone who really wants to come down. Hopefully within a month. I think I can do it in a month. But that's the sort of dream. But I think much like anything, I suppose, when businesses are first set up, you sort of, you know, things happen. I didn't expect to open up potentially an office or studio this year, but I think when it came to it and I saw the right place, I was like, actually, yeah, let's just do it. So the past month has been, I always do this D-Day collection, which is online, but putting together this D-Day collection, putting together this Tolkien collection, and in the middle of that, deciding actually want to open a shop as well. So yeah, it's been quite an eventful month, to be honest. I think I never expected to take on so much, but then I do enjoy it. So it kind of, yeah, it's not really a chore. It's quite a passion project.
Well, that's excellent. And it's good to have a month like that where everything's coming together. All the projects are hitting at the same time rather than
clicking sort of. Yeah, I think initially there was a point that I thought I was going to have a breakdown, but I realized the amount that I had to do. But I think I've always worked quite well under pressure. But also for me, it's sort of doing Bayliss books or being a rare book dealer. I have this sort of tagline, I suppose, which might be a bit naff. I don't know. I'm still undecided if it is. But I see myself as a collector first, dealer second. So for me, and that might be a bit naff. I'm still unsure. But I think for me, because I love what I do and I love the books, and I only deal in, you know, authors or books I actually have a passion about. It actually becomes, you know, even at the busiest points, it's not boring, it's not stressful particularly. It's actually just, you know, if you're going to spend your day working on Tolkien or say Agatha Christie or something, it's pretty enjoyable. And even if I do, but also even when I do sometimes maybe get kind of, you know, people can, in any job and get stressed, I often do remind myself of there are many, many people who have jobs they absolutely loathe. And if my day is spent, I don't know, delving into Tolkien letters, I'm definitely quite lucky, I think, in that sense that I've managed to make my job being that, which I'm still pinching myself about. Yeah.
What drew you to rare book dealing to begin with?
So when I left school, I became a chef, which is polar opposite to what I do now. I grew up I grew up reading the classics. I adored reading, and I was very naughty at school. Actually, I was expelled from a couple of schools. But amongst that, when I wasn't working, I was obsessed with the classics and just the effort that I should have put in my English class I was doing at home. And also at the same time, I feel like all big collectors or all kind of dealers generally have something in their genesis, their kind of past that they collected, which often actually isn't books initially. So when I was 13, I got weirdly, like, so heavily into vinyl. Out of nowhere, I saw a vinyl one day and I was like, I love that. I want that so much. And then 13 to 16 was almost quite sort of batshit level of collecting vinyl. I think my parents were actually a bit worried that why are you so obsessed with this? And then as at the same time reading an incredibly huge amount, I then inherited my grandfather's book collection. There's nothing in there particularly rare. It was more just, initially, getting these antique tomes at home, just immediately, I was like, this is amazing. This is the most interesting thing. And I still didn't know you could do that as your job. I assumed, it'd be you source things from auctions and it'd be an auction that sells everything. I'd never even crossed my mind. Then I got really into cooking, left school, became a chef. And after a number of years, I think just the pressure cooker of a kitchen, I realized I couldn't do this in my life. And by pure chance, I'm going to name check a dealer here. They always get name checked. I happened to walk past Peter Harrington one day, obviously the biggest book dealer in the world. And I suddenly realized, like, fuck, you can do that as your job. Never crossed my mind that I could do that as a job. And then I hounded many different dealers for a job. And eventually Shapiro gave me one. And then, worked in rare books for a number of years. Learned a huge amount, sort of cut my teeth there, I suppose. And then during the pandemic, we were all working from home. And I'm 32 now, so I must have been 28 or 29. I remember thinking, like, I'd love to try and do this by myself. And, if it goes wrong, I'm young enough for, I can go back maybe to another dealer or do something completely different. But I'd love to try and do this myself. And thankfully, I hate the phrase stars aligned, but maybe they did, I don't know. It all seemed to kind of glue together and worked incredibly well. Here we are 3 years later, opening a physical space, and I'm now being interviewed about Tolkien. So it's, quite amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's do a little bit of show and tell. You've been hinting at the Lord of the Rings set. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, that's what we've all been waiting for.
I'll start with Fellowship. So much stuff here. So a particularly lovely copy of Fellowship of the Rings. It's just inside
he's got an embarrassment of riches over there off camera.
Yeah, thousands of items,
thousands of volumes.
But no, it's a beautiful copy. Unrestored, matte to the back in pristine condition. It is, of the copies I've come across, it's absolutely lovely. We've got Return of the King as well. The red top stain on each is in very vibrant condition. Two towers.
If you looked at the states for those, so you know which one it is for Return of the King.
Well, what?
The state. If you looked at the states.
The drop text and everything. So this is the one. You just double check.
Has it got page 49?
I do.
I know which page it is.
Page 49, has the drop text. But at this point,
so it's a later.
That's
a later one.
That's a second. That's a second state.
Yeah, it's a later one.
Yeah,
I didn't know that actually. That's interesting. And then
you do need to mention that, by the way.
I will do. I know. I make a big point of kind of there's a lot of different sets out there that don't have that. And then we have all the letters as well. So I'll show you the bag end one here.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's not the bag end one actually. That is. Yes, the 1968 one to Jackson, talking about the Hobbit play. Quite a lovely little letter.
Okay.
Signature on that one is particularly lovely.
Yeah.
And then I'll show you. Where's the real one? There's so many letters here.
It's a small slip of paper that one was on.
Actually, I'll show you the galley-proof one. That one is particularly amazing. So the galley-proof letter.
Yep.
So this was to W.N. Beard, and he he's the production manager for Allen and Unwin. So he wasn't the editor. He was the one who was in charge of making sure they printed it properly.
Yeah.
And then
Tolkien's to him.
It then has when it's sent on to Gerald. So yeah, it's handwritten to Gerald, and then has the stamp date of, I assume, actually when they received it, to then be filed. But I do love the fact that as Tolkien is writing this, he then makes sure he then stops his typewriter so he can then put in red. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And then all the corrections thereafter: dwarves, elven, elves. It's also on the thinnest paper in the world. It's like rice paper. Anytime I touch it, I'm absolutely terrified. It's weird. It's like it's see-through. It's kind of,
He reused paper. A lot of the paper he got from college, and he just stole it and took it home and reused it. So that's why the only paper that's really good normally is the embossed stuff, because he paid for that. But the rest of it, he's just reuse it from somewhere else.
Yeah, because paper was much harder. Paper was much harder to come by back then than it is now.
No, I just think he was used to not paying for paper. He was at college. Just took it all.
Post-war as well, actually. It kind of makes sense.
Are you saying Tolkien was cheap? Trotter, are you saying Tolkien was cheap? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, he was.
Tolkien was a very cheap man. Here we have the Riddle letter, Merton College, Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
The handwriting on that is
beautiful handwriting. Beautiful handwriting.
It really is. I'll show you the bit actually that delves into
beautiful, indecipherable handwriting.
The bit that delves into his son. I'll show you that, because that is particularly interesting. Yeah, here we go. So it's the top of page 3. Goes into. My own son said to me 2 days ago that he could not bear the name Arthur, my father's name, as it suggested a rather silly elderly type with mustaches, too much watch chain, and probably a curly pipe. Now, that is an interesting fact about my son, and doubtless has a complex explanation of its own, but has little, if anything, to do with Arthur per se. This is a preamble saying that what you detest about, and then it goes into Rafe. I assume Rafe must be mentioned in the letter from Riddle, actually, to Tolkien. Then it goes into basic prejudices about names, which I think is fascinating. But to have the reference and quote of his son referencing Tolkien's father, so the son's grandfather, is absolutely brilliant. But then it then goes into some of the most confusing things about split infinitives I've ever read in my entire life. In both the Riddle letters, are sort of, I always see it as kind of points that I think people can actually understand. And then he then goes straight back into possibly the most confusing stuff I've ever read. I think even if you weren't an English teacher, you'd be like, what the hell is he talking about?
There are quite a lot of letters like that, and they're confusing. That you don't necessarily understand what he's talking about.
The bag end letter with the original envelope, which is fascinating.
I love
that. That's got the Oxford postmark on, I assume.
Yeah, the postmark is fantastic on that.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Oxford postmark, always
that
good.
Is in particularly fine condition. Also, very nice paper, actually, that one. Talking about paper, there is a watermark in it as well.
Yep.
Is that the stamp one? Is there a stamp in it as well?
What's that?
Has it got his address stamp embossed in it?
Yes, 76 Sandfield Road.
76, yeah. What's the... There's a watermark, Oliver, you said? What's the watermark on that paper?
Basildon Bond.
It should be Basildon Bond. I was going to say that. If it's not... He loves
noticed that until now. When I was cataloguing it, it was always flashed on the table. Actually seeing it in the light, I didn't notice that.
Okay.
That is fascinating.
We did see a fake years ago that had the wrong watermark.
Really?
Yeah, that's a good way to spot a fake.
Yeah.
Where was the fake? Tell me a bit more about
that. This was years ago. There was an individual faking Tolkien signatures who actually went to court and ended up in prison.
Fair enough.
And he used to write
money on a first edition or letter.
Yeah.
And my favourite thing that he ever did was he tried to sell the typewriter that he'd faked the letters on as being Tolkien's typewriter.
Oh my god!
That was amazing. Really.
What an idiot!
But he did. He tried to sell the typewriter.
Maybe he's a bit of a fantasist, sort of wanted to be Tolkien.
I think he was. He was a fantasist.
Yeah, we've tried to categorize a lot of his fakes so that when they show up on the market again, we can easily identify them.
Yeah, they are on the website. You can see the listeners' forgeries in case
it's a good thing to have, actually. I think, especially with letters and signatures, it is something that can be forged.
They are terrible, though. That's so obvious that it's a fake.
I've
got one, and it's so obvious. If I was to show you that one compared with what you've got, you'd look at it straight away and say, this is a fake.
Someone with a biro, kind of,
it's terrible.
1920s letter on biro,
The blue biro letters. There were a couple that were in blue biro. I remember that. But yeah, and some of them are still out in private collections. They weren't all tracked down after he was caught. So
it'd be quite heartbreaking if you bought something, I don't know, 20 years ago as maybe an investment, and it would have been a good investment 20 years ago, to then discover you have something that's completely worthless would be, that's horrendous. I think jail time is a good thing for that person.
The other thing we're hoping the guide is useful for is to, separate out, understand, give you a good idea of what's real and what's not, because, the current market, as you're extremely well aware, is conducive towards forgery. It's like if you can get a high-res scan of his signature and put that together and print it out, and it's given digital tools these days, and the value if you can get away with it.
That's true. Actually,
something we really have to fight, which is why content and provenance, which everything you've got is beyond reproach.
To be honest, even with so you saying the rise of AI, I'm sure things like that in the future will actually make potentially forging a signature significantly easier. There probably is a time when maybe it would be pretty almost 99.9% you wouldn't be able to distinguish the two of them. But I sell a lot of Harry Potter as well, and that has a lot of forgeries, a huge amount. Some of which are
Tolkien has a lot of.
I understand that they did holograms for J.K. Rowling's signature.
They did,
They forged them as well.
Yeah, they also forged the books as well. Years ago. I actually got offered once when I was working for a dealer a while back. They got offered a book which they very nearly bought, but thankfully the sort of head of literature, they had it. They hadn't bought it. Had been sent and was on approval. He noticed the size was just out. And what it turns out that the person did is obviously the first edition was published, the hardback alongside the paperback. Paperback was marginally bigger or marginally smaller than the hardback. So they basically just took out the book block of the paperback. Someone managed to print really perfect boards. I think they managed to get the same machine Bloomsbury used, and then married them together. But I had the same guy. I get offered forgeries on various different things quite a lot, but something about his email address I just remembered. I couldn't remember where I remembered it from, but it was a really particular email address. And I messaged the guy I used to work with, and I was like, does this email address ring a bell? And he's like, oh my God, it's the same person. Because it was the same books that they got offered. It was, Ayn Rand, Potter. I think there might have been there was a Tolkien item in there, but there's something about it that actually just looked so crap. It's not real. But I then ended up telling the ABA about it. Apparently Interpol on the hunt for this guy, and I very much hoping it never happened that I could go and meet him wearing a wire or something. So when he pulls out the book, never happened. Sadly,
So we've seen some of the books, and the letters look fantastic. You have
there's a lot more books down in
the
down in the office.
Do you have that, Oliver? Do you have that Hobbit handy by chance? The one you were referencing earlier?
Give me 1 second, I'll grab it.
Sure,
So this one doesn't have the jacket with it, but it is a really pristine copy.
Excellent.
And then inside. It's particularly, don't open up too much, but particularly beautiful copy.
Awesome.
Absolutely stunning. And also, ones I've saw before, generally the spine starts to crack quite a lot. Often it is coming away on even particularly fine copies I've come across, sort of near fine copies. The spine is usually coming away slightly, but on this, it's perfectly holding its shape. A beautiful, beautiful copy. And then there are a few other things in the collection which are downstairs as well, which I will reveal on Friday.
Looking forward to seeing that on
Friday. I think we're really looking forward to seeing the catalogue, and good luck with sales. It sounds like you'll have an awful lot of interest, I suspect.
I think so. Yeah, my email inbox has been inundated with people using my contact form to sign up to be the first to get, which is amazing. I think I kind of expect that, though. I think Tolkien is such a beloved author and one of the most iconic authors of the 20th century, if not sort of longer than that. So yeah, I always expect there to be a lot of interest, and I think especially with the letters being so interesting. And I also think with the Sherlock Holmes one, as I said before, that went from being an interesting letter because it's by Tolkien and it's signed by him, the handwritten one, not the handwritten, sorry, the typed one. But then as soon as you get major references like that, I was sort of sending a press release out recently, and that was quite a small mention actually in it, that a few major publications over the next couple of days, a few major newspapers here are covering it. That's the angle they loved completely, just because Sherlock Holmes and Tolkien is sort of, they're so different, but the kind of the connection there just being so iconic. And something so amazing. So also so British about the kind of two of them, sort of these icons of English literature. And then Tolkien actually being arguably a bit of a dick. It's kind of cut that out.
That's true.
Arguably.
We say that. You can't sue us now, though. So you can
everything with arguably or seemingly, and you're fine.
I think we're okay.
It's all good. It's all good. Well, it's been fantastic talking with you, Oliver. Really looking forward to this catalog and your future ones as well. I'm very happy to personally be a subscriber to your newsletter and see what else you get coming through your doors. I know that going off on your own is a big challenge, and I'm very happy it's been successful so far. But
thank you very much.
To stay successful, and
fingers crossed.
The more passionate dealers / collectors like you there are, it really helps the entire book collecting industry to
thank you.
Grow and improve and stay relevant, I think. So
I think kind of younger, there are very few. You had Tom Ayling on fairly recently. Sort of the only two people our age, I think, at the moment who are really sort of selling books like this, which is shocking. I think when I first came to it, even in kind of major dealers, there's not that many sort of, I think in the book trade, sort of 50 is considered young, which is kind of mad when you think about it. So sort of, I think hopefully me and Tom can inspire more young people to want to go into the book trade.
Absolutely. Good. Well, you guys are stellar examples of how to do it right and to
definitely
be successful. So
well, it was Tom who inspired me actually to start doing videos. His video content is so amazing, and as much as I love him as a person, he used to piss me off quietly. I was like, I need to start making videos, and the plan is going forward to make a lot more videos. Give Tom a run for his money.
He's very good at those videos. I enjoy.
He is. Too good.
Well, thank you again. It's been a great pleasure talking with you, and really look forward to seeing this catalog.
You too. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.